When I was a child, there's one thing I said: I never want to be alone. That's what I would say. I don't want to be alone. I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. Particularly Instagram, people look like they have a much better life than they really do. People basically seem like they are way better looking than they really are, and they are way happier seeming than they really are. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I don't spend my time pontificating about high-concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. I care very deeply about the people at Tesla. I feel like I have a great debt to the people of Tesla who are making the company successful. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic: being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. We're already cyborgs. Your phone and your computer are extensions of you, but the interface is through finger movements or speech, which are very slow. My opinion is it's a bridge too far to go to fully autonomous cars. I do love email. Wherever possible, I try to communicate asynchronously. I'm really good at email. Yeah, well, I think anyone who likes fast cars will love the Tesla. And it has fantastic handling, by the way. I mean, this car will crush a Porsche on the track, just crush it. So if you like fast cars, you'll love this car. And then, oh, by the way, it happens to be electric and it's twice the efficiency of a Prius. I like the word autopilot more than I like the word self-driving. Self-driving sounds like it's going to do something you don't want it to do. Autopilot is a good thing to have in planes, and we should have it in cars. With DNA, you have to be able to tell which genes are turned on or off. Current DNA sequencing cannot do that. The next generation of DNA sequencing needs to be able to do this. If somebody invents this, then we can start to very precisely identify cures for diseases. I'd like to dial it back 5% or 10% and try to have a vacation that's not just email with a view. If you think back to the beginning of cell phones, laptops, or really any new technology, it's always expensive. Some companies out there quote a start of production that is substantially in advance of when customers get their cars. Selling an electric sports car creates an opportunity to fundamentally change the way America drives. The reality is gas prices should be much more expensive than they are because we're not incorporating the true damage to the environment and the hidden costs of mining oil and transporting it to the US. Whenever you have an unpriced externality, you have a bit of a market failure, to the degree that eternality remains unpriced. Mars is the only place in the solar system where it's possible for life to become multiplanetarian. Over time, I think we will probably see a closer merger of biological intelligence and digital intelligence. I've actually made a prediction that within 30 years a majority of new cars made in the United States will be electric. And I don't mean hybrid, I mean fully electric. I think there are more politicians in favor of electric cars than against. There are still some that are against, and I think the reasoning for that varies depending on the person, but in some cases, they just don't believe in climate change. They think oil will last forever. You could warm Mars up, over time, with greenhouse gases. The path to the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office, and it should not be through the marketing department. It needs to be through engineering and design. Stationary storage will be as big as the car business long term. The growth rate will probably be several times what it is for the car business. The lessons of history would suggest that civilizations move in cycles. You can track that back quite far: the Babylonians, the Sumerians, followed by the Egyptians, the Romans, China. We're obviously in a very upward cycle right now, and hopefully that remains the case. But it may not. An asteroid or a supervolcano could certainly destroy us, but we also face risks the dinosaurs never saw: an engineered virus, nuclear war, inadvertent creation of a micro-black hole, or some as yet unknown technology could spell the end of us. On one of the SpaceX flights, we had a secret payload, a wheel of cheese. We flew to orbit and brought it back, so it was the world's first space cheese. It was, in part, a tribute to Monty Python. In the early days of aviation, there was a great deal of experimentation and a high death rate. The odds of me coming into the rocket business, not knowing anything about rockets, not having ever built anything, I would have to be insane if I thought the odds were in my favor. You need to be in the position where it is the cost of the fuel that actually matters and not the cost of building the rocket in the first place. I'm personally a moderate and a registered independent, so I'm not strongly Democratic or strongly Republican. The future of humanity is going to bifurcate in two directions. Either it's going to become multiplanetary, or it's going to remain confined to one planet, and eventually there's going to be an extinction event. Government isn't that good at rapid advancement of technology. It tends to be better at funding basic research. To have things take off, you've got to have commercial companies do it. I was born in Africa. I came to California because it's really where new technologies can be brought to fruition, and I don't see a viable competitor. If we're going to have any chance of sending stuff to other star systems, we need to be laser focused on becoming a multi-planet civilization. A company is a group organized to create a product or service, and it is only as good as its people and how excited they are about creating. I do want to recognize a ton of super talented people. I just happen to be the face of the companies. The factory is the machine that builds the machine. I tend to approach things from a physics framework. And physics teaches you to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. I've actually not read any books on time management. Biofuels such as ethanol require enormous amounts of cropland and end up displacing either food crops or natural wilderness, neither of which is good. It is theoretically possible to warp spacetime itself, so you're not actually moving faster than the speed of light, but it's actually space that's moving. I think Tesla will most likely develop its own autopilot system for the car, as I think it should be camera-based, not lidar-based. However, it is also possible that we do something jointly with Google. It is definitely true that the fundamental enabling technology for electric cars is lithium-ion as a cell chemistry technology. In the absence of that, I don't think it's possible to make an electric car that is competitive with a gasoline car. If you want to grow a giant redwood, you need to make sure the seeds are okay, nurture the sapling, and work out what might potentially stop it from growing all the way along. Anything that breaks it at any point stops that growth. We could definitely make a flying car, but that's not the hard part. The hard part is, how do you make a flying car that's super safe and quiet? Because if it's a howler, you're going to make people very unhappy. The revolutionary breakthrough will come with rockets that are fully and rapidly reusable. We will never conquer Mars unless we do that. It'll be too expensive. The American colonies would never have been pioneered if the ships that crossed the ocean hadn't been reusable. In order for us to have a future that's exciting and inspiring, it has to be one where we're a space-bearing civilization. I don't think it's a good idea to plan to sell a company. I'm glad to see that BMW is bringing an electric car to market. That's cool.